Hi, everyone. I'm Amber Young.
And I'm Barbara Phillips.
And this is
Let's Talk EVM.
All right, to kick us off, I will start with a disclaimer that is for myself and Barbara.
Yes.
That all of the views that we express on this podcast are our own and are not the views of the United States government.
So to introduce today's podcast, we want to tell you that we are making this a short segment, and it's on a specific topic, and it's about being able to explain things to your neighbor. That's like a way of saying to keep it relatively simple and short. So we hope to keep this, in a timely amount. And today's topic is IP2M meter, which stands for
the Integrated Program and Project Management, IP2M meter, Maturity Environment Total Risk Rating.
Great. So today's guests are Daniel Goldsmith and Amber Young, who are two experts in the subject of IP2M meter. So we hope at the end of this segment, you'll have a sense of what is this approach, where it came from, what its value is, and if you have more questions, you'll know where to get them answered. But so let me start by allowing my former co-host and current guest, Amber, to introduce herself and why she's familiar with IP2M meter.
Hi, everyone. I am Amber Young, and I am co-host, typically, of Let's Talk EVM. My experience with IP2M meter began in 2020, and I was a part of the first IP2M meter environment assessment conducted for the Department of Energy. I was a deputy for the maturity and environment reviews, and have been conducting IP2M meter assessments, both maturity and environment assessments, which are two separate assessments, since 2020. I've also participated, and I'm still participating in the ASU study that was the initiation of the IP2M meter framework. So, yes, I think I've been on approximately 7 to 10 IP2M meter reviews.
Holy cow, I didn't even know there were that many.
Yeah.
And how about you, Daniel? What brings you to the table today as our guest?
Hello again. Glad to be back on the show. Let's see, IP2M meter, I was first introduced to it in 2021 when I joined the Department of Energy. And like Amber said, went on several reviews doing the environmental and maturity assessments. I don't know how many I've done, Amber. It's probably not quite as many as you. But I also took the training that they had at the Empower Users Group a couple years ago. So I facilitated a couple of them. And yeah, excited to talk about it. It's a little bit different look at the different aspects of interim value management system. I like it.
One last note. All three of us on this call were a part of the initial cohort for
inaugural
cohort for the IP2M meter facilitator certification in 2024, right before the Empowers User Group.
Yep.
Yes.
In May.
And I was able to co-facilitate an assessment and submit a report to Arizona State. And so I'm on the list.
Barbara is certified.
I'm certifiable, I can tell you that. But the reason that Amber and I rigged up this this segment here today is really, I just wanted to have our audience, have our listeners know a little bit more about what went into developing it. Where did that criteria come from? Was it just somebody, sitting down with a piece of paper and a back of an envelope and writing it all down, or were there a lot of people involved? And how did that criteria come around? And then after that question, I'm then going to ask you like your opinion on which is more valuable, the environment or the maturity, and help to separate the two. So recapping, I'll start with you, Daniel. Do you know anything about how this whole craft kit and caboodle came together?
Yeah, so it was a conglomerate. Is that the right word? Conglomerate conglomerate. That's probably not the right word. It was a bunch of different agencies and private companies got together. It was funded by the Department of Energy with Arizona State University. And from what I recall, the initial task was they wanted to come up with a way that they could rate earned value management systems. Okay, they wanted to see, and what they did is they did a lot of surveys of all different programs that were completed or incompleted. They wanted to know, okay, if you're this far along, how do you rate these different attributes, which is how they broke down the 32 EIA 748 EVMS guidelines. They broke them into 56 attributes that I'm sure Amber will probably talk about. For the maturity portion, to say, okay, how were you at this stage in the contract? So that they could kind of come together and say, okay, typically for a successful project, you were this, and unsuccessful ones, you were this, and here's kind of some gradings in the middle, looking at that. And then they also wanted to say, okay, the parts that aren't in, and Amber, you can jump in if you want to add something to this. The parts that aren't related specifically to one of those 32 guidelines, which when we talk about explaining, I'll kind of call it the squishy parts. What were the factors that went into if a project was successful or not? For example, management styles, or all the appropriate amount of resources, available, stuff like that. So it's not something that's per se measurable in a metric, but needed to be looked at and were characteristics of whether a project was successful or not. Amber, what's your experience?
Or had the conditions to be successful.
Or the condition, that's a better way to put it, the conditions to be successful. And again, these were, I don't remember how many projects were part of it. I know they did this study over several years, but they looked at not just DOD, they looked at DOE. They had some other private industry contractors come and participate, trying to get a whole swath of looking at the management of various projects, what factors were successful and not successful, and then if they did this, how did the project end up? Looking at all this, it was a big study to try and metricize the different aspects of a system.
Yeah, and I wish I don't have in front of me the typical slide that talks to how many participants there were and how many documents. I know there was a thorough document review, like hundreds of documents through the beginnings of EVMS time, right, that were used by a research group. So it was very academic. There were graduate students and professors who contributed towards the analysis of all of this and the synthesis of all this. And then surveys, there were workshops where there were, one of my deficiencies is orders of magnitude. A little tidbit for everyone. I studied physics and I was interested in theoretical physics. So orders of magnitude are just like 10 to the 6th is equivalent to 10 to the 8th. They're very similar. No, they're not. So anyways, I don't know exactly how many participants. Numbers just so stick in my head that way.
There's a lot of rigor
but
involved.
There were many participants, and there were many industries, and
you can read. They have it all published. It's all
published. There's about 7 publications right now, and growing. It's a whole area of academic study that is continuing to grow, and we're looking at where do we want to go from here, the new frontiers with that study. But beyond DOE, there was DOE, DOD, NASA, FAA, I believe, NSF, many different agencies that came together to distill down what are the systems of systems and processes that build a maturity of the EVMS. So I feel like I can go into the other question if you want to go into that.
I think it's a good time to segue to it. I'll let you, let me just finish and I'll hear your question or comment, Daniel. To me, when I studied the subject, the terms environment and maturity didn't immediately lend themselves to the definition as they're used at IP2M METRR. So that's really the focus of our 15 minutes here, is to really zero in on what is the difference and what are their roles, and then your opinion, which is the more important. But Daniel, you had a comment.
I just wanted to add, there was also a lot of contractors that were involved in that. So it wasn't it wasn't just government, private industry also came in. to give their point of views and opinions in part of a lot of these surveys as part of these academic studies. So they were trying to get from my understanding, a well-rounded data set for that.
Yeah.
So I want to add that in.
Definitely.
Okay, so Amber, now tell us about the difference in which is your fave.
Okay. I'm not going to do fave until the end. I think we should hash out the differences, but I think I have a very, in my opinion, clear way of distinguishing the two.
Okay.
Okay. To me, in the IP2M meter, we have maturity and environment. To me, maturity equals EVM. Everything we've ever known about EVM, the ANSI standards, the processes, all of the systems and everything we've ever done, surveillance and compliance and all EVMS reviews, that is maturity.
Okay.
That's the construct, the WBS, the PMB, the EAC, the reporting, everything about EVMS, that's maturity. Then environment is the new thing that we've never talked about in EVM in concrete terms. So the way I see it, it's two dimensions, right? So we've added a whole new dimension, and that to me is so novel and why I'm so excited about the IP2M meter. I feel that I actually came to EVM not even having ever heard of it before. I have a very interesting, different way to EVM. Maybe someday we could talk about that, find that interesting. But I was very enamored with EVM because of how rigorous it was. And I see it as a very mature system of philosophy. And IP2M meter is the next evolution of it, where now we're going to another dimension and we're looking at this mature whole body of knowledge on EVMS. But now let's talk about environment. And the environment is all, like Daniel says, the soft things,
The squishy
stuff, the people skills, which PMI even are saying those are the most people. Even in this AI revolution, people
Still
matter.
all
This
about
is,
the people.
It's about the culture, the transparency, the trust, all of the things with people. Anyways, environment are those squishy things, and it's adding a whole new dimension, and it's just maturing the whole corpus of earned value management and project management and performance management to another level. I have one more thought on that, and it'll come to me. It kind of escaped, but I get really excited about the IP2M meter and seeing it as the next evolution of the conversation of earned value management. So maturity to me is just EVM, and environment is adding the new dimension to it.
Okay, all right. She's still withholding her opinion, her final opinion on her favorite, but we'll get back to her on that. So now, Daniel, what is what do you see here?
Geez, I kind of want to be a little controversial.
Ooh.
So, and here's why I say that. I agree it's a novel way to look at it, but I don't think the environmental is necessarily new, and here's why.
That was my yes.
Here's why. So, most of my career I was with DCMA, and if I go back about 15 years, we'll say, when I used to work for DCMA, I work for ClearPlan now, so I'm not, like you said, our views are not related to, are not of that of the U.S. government. But back in the day, we would look at things that we called like CAM knowledge, okay, and we would look at those squishy things to say, can you handle this scope work, kind of stuff that. Not the same factors that the environmental goes over an IP2M meter, but it was a lot of those things that could not be metricized, okay, and how they affected the rest of the system. Because that, as everybody, you all know with your earned value management system, you've got your three pillars, okay. You've got your people, your process, your tools, and part of those is implementing them, okay. You can't put a metric to how something is implemented, and that's how I identify or define the environmental part, because how you implement that process and what you're being told to do has a huge influence. And here's a perfect example. I feel like I can talk more about environmental because, Amber, you talked a lot about maturity, so I'm kind of going to balance that a little bit. I know we have to be quick on time, but here's an example of how that can go wrong in your EVMS. You may have all the processes in the world telling you how to do your EAC, your estimate at complete, right? But if you've got a project manager and they're saying, I don't care what, you're going to report that the EAC is $75 million. I don't care what the numbers are saying. That's what it's going to be. Okay.
Right.
You can run all the metrics in the world. It's still going to come out to 75 million. And you're not going to figure out what the root cause of that is without digging into the environmental part, because your metrics are going to be off. Your estimate's never going to be right, even though it's always showing 75 million. And then you're going to come up within 6 months of the end and say, oh, by the way, we need to double that. We're going to need more funding in Congress in the next month. And they're going to be like, hey, what the heck happened? How did this happen? So that environmental is looking at those other factors that are not part of any one of those 32 guidelines. The squishy stuff, like I called it before, that, hey, let's sit in a room and talk about on a day-to-day basis. What's your battle rhythm? What's the culture like? Okay. What's the resources that are available to you? How are you implementing these processes? So, and what I really like is, especially from the Department of Energy, I know this is not reflecting any opinions of the government, but I like how they've done it in the past, in that when they review the environmental, there are no, they're not writing up any cars. There's no punitive actions that come about it, because they want to get the honest truth about how that's working. Where this is so important, in my opinion, is when you have maturity issues and you do that 5 why root cause analysis to find out where that comes from, 99% of the time, if you drill down far enough, it's related to one of these environmental issues. So it
And
is
that's the maturity factors, not is the change control process documented correctly and followed
exactly.
and passing the decometrics, but it zeroes back to.
So what we're seeing and what we're really keying in on is the maturity will be a deficiency, and the environment factor is the root cause.
I think so. I think that they fit in perfectly together.
And they're
Hand in
just two
glove right
different
there.
dimensions,
Yeah.
right? It's a very different way of seeing it. And one more point to what Daniel was saying about it isn't new. I agree. That what I think is new is that
It's documented.
It is now a lexicon. It is uniform. It is consistent. We build as a community a conversation around these environment factors. It becomes normative. We now have a platform and a vocabulary to use to have those more difficult conversations, to make those decisions, right? To have the early morning and in that environment rather than just in the maturity of the system. So I think
I think we're zeroing in on if just Amber would answer that question.
Oh, which is more important?
Which is your favorite? Fave.
Whew. Data.
But it's all data.
I know. So it was a.
You want me to go first, Barbara?
I think apparently.
Okay. So I'm going to say it depends on the phase, again, to be controversial. And here's what I mean by that. I think the maturity is more important in the review phase, where I think the environmental is more important in the fixing phase.
Ooh, I'm a fixer, so I think I'd probably lean towards environment. I want to find solutions.
That is a great point to end on. And we thank you, Daniel. We thank you, Amber. And signing off from the wharf here in Washington, this is Let's Talk EVM.